All right, welcome to the second part in the Cold War series. This one's about the Korean War. All right, so a little bit of background or context for this is that Japan conquered Korea in 1910. Back then it was only one country, just Korea, not North and South. But what happened to Japan in 1945? Well, they were nuked. They lost World War II, and Korea was taken from them. So the United States and the Soviet Union split Korea into two parts. You have the North, which is communist, and the South, which is democratic. And they divided it at the 38th parallel, which is 38 degrees north, just like in the picture. Okay, so domino theory. Think about what happens when you stand dominoes in a line and you knock one over. The domino theory was this. But instead of dominoes, it was countries falling to communism. So if you look at the picture at the bottom, it shows Korea falling to communism first, which will lead to Vietnam falling to communism, and so on. So all we need to do is stop the first one from falling, and we can save all the rest of the countries from communism. Okay, so the ping pong match begins in 1950. Basically, North Korea calls up Stalin, and he's like, yo, is it cool if we invade South Korea? And Stalin is like, yes, but do not take more than you can give. And North Korea is like, let's go. So with Stalin's blessing, North Korea invades the South, and the South gets whomped. I mean, they get their butts kicked. And they ask the United Nations for help. So over the next 2 months, North Korea takes over almost all of the South, except for Busan, which is the last foothold and landing spot for the United Nations to help them out. It's not like they can land in communist China up here and help out the South Koreans, right? So the Pusan perimeter, this area down here, is a really, really important military position for South Korea and the United Nations. Okay, so in comes the brilliant and arrogant U.S. General Douglas MacArthur. And he leads 15 countries to help defend South Korea. After establishing their foothold in Pusan, they just kind of sit back for a minute and play defense. But he does something really smart here. His defense is more of a distraction. The bulk of the military actually goes around, as you can see down here, and they land at Incheon, which cuts off North Korean forces and traps them miraculously. The UN soldiers continue to move north all the way to the top until they reach the Yalu River up here at China's border. And how do you think China is feeling about this? Probably not too great, considering that they are communist. And you have a democratic powerhouse coming close to your border. Okay, so China is like, yo, our boys are in trouble. Let's back them up. And China and North Korea actually push the United Nations back. And then they captured South Korea capital, Seoul, again. Some UN troops get cut off and surrounded. It was a mess. Douglas MacArthur, the military master I spoke of earlier, basically wanted to nuke them. So yeah, let's just nuke them, right? And the President Truman, he's like, no. And then MacArthur gets on TV and he says some stuff, and then he gets fired. Okay, so the fighting continues for about 2 more years. So eventually the UN soldiers take back Seoul, and then in 1953, after the death of 5 million people, they signed a ceasefire agreement, which is basically a temporary peace. So technically, North and South Korea are still at war, even though they haven't fought since 1953. As you may have guessed, North Korea ended up with a terrible economy and food shortages, and of course, nuclear weapons eventually. South Korea, on the other hand, ends up with a democracy and a booming economy. So if you think about it, thanks to South Korea, we now enjoy Samsung products and K-pop. And thanks to North Korea, we have Seth Rogen's The Interview. All right, here is a review and overview of what it all looks like put together. And that's it. See you next time.